Hey everyone, today for another vlog, and for today I want to talk about being goal cucked. What is it, and what is my experience of it? So just to give some context, I've been I've been learning more about like actual magic, like the type of magic that was, like not like magic tricks, but like actual magic, the one that is used behind, the one that is like the background behind, stuff like astrology or the tarot or druidry or those kind of practices. So in particular, I'm reading up about occultism through the guidance of John Michael Greer's blog posts on uh, Eliphas, I don't know how it's pronounced, Levi. So it's a 19th century uh, occultist, I think occultist, but at least magic practitioner. Kind of revived magic in his era, and so he yeah, I just find this entire world of magic to be incredibly fascinating in terms of like the symbols and all of the traditions and links between, all of those Western practices. And yeah, I really love symbols. It's kind of it's funny how I think my interest in mathematics was mainly driven by symbols when I think about it. I just love to get into a subject just because of there were like cool symbols and I wanted to understand them. Like sometimes just like like when I talk about symbols, I'm not talking about like figures or like not necessarily like the mathematical symbols, but sometimes some of the some of the symbols in maths are really cool, right? Like the integral symbol is really cool. Yeah, many of the like summation and the equations are really cool as well. But talking more like the figures and the diagrams in math, they're really cool to me. Yes, yeah, occultism is really cool in that regard, and I really love that aspect, symbols and learning more about this aspect of reality, seeing beyond the veil of the material plane, you could say, and thinking deeply about the myths and all that. There's one thing that I just realized today that really has bothered me. Well, not really bothered me, but it's like something I want to keep in mind as I go through it. I don't know how long my interest in occultism will stay. Uh, you know, there's one thing I know for sure, which is when it comes to like the spiritual or non-mainstream stuff, I know I will always be practicing something related to the chakra system, right, which is not uh, part of the occult system. Right? The two things are quite different, although there are systems that take into account the chakra system as well. But occultism is a very new thing to me, and I don't know how long I will take it. Like for example, the chakra system has immediate value to me because it immediately connects with like the human body rather than how you deal with the energies in your body, how you process your trauma, for instance, how to release it and all that. So chakra system is incredibly valuable to me because I've seen it in myself. Occultism is quite different. Like it's a really heavy body of work. It's really heavy on intellectualization and all that, right? So, but the symbolisms are really nice, and I think I would still be interested in it as the years go by, but I'm not sure. And one of the aspects that is really like yeah, that rubbed me wrong way about a lot of spirituality is simply about how it's incredibly fucking serious. First of all, like it's like the tone is so incredibly serious, and obviously, in like magic, you're talking about serious things. Obviously, you're talking about like demons and possession, and you know, not being an unconscious person within this world. That's a big deal, right? And you're talking about death, and obviously, those are serious subjects. But like, it has this really like heavy tone of like that spiritual purpose is the only thing that matters in life. That kind of tone, and this is sort of what I mean by goal cucks. It's basically when a path or an institution or person or group of people impose their goals onto you, and there's nothing wrong with having goals, but the problem is when someone else's goals replace your own. And what I realize is that basically this is what society does to everyone all the time, just goal cucking all the fucking time. This is what school does when it comes to learning, right? Like you can't set your own goals for learning. School dictates what you have to learn, and of course, it goes really, really badly because most people are not interested in the things they are in the classroom for, which is they just study to pass the tests because they don't care about the things. work is a massive goal cuck. You know, again, you're not really in control during work. You're just doing it for money and all that. So yeah, just reluctant participation all the time, as you can imagine. Society overall just defines its own goals. You know, it defines happiness as this thing that is most important somehow. It also defines the kind of happiness to pursue. Like, not only is it questionable to say that happiness is the most important thing, you know, that is something we could debate over, but society's definition of happiness is incredibly flawed in so many ways. So that's one of the biggest example of a goal cuck. Um, yeah, society's notion of basically everything are incredibly flawed and should be highly questioned. You know, freedom, you know, the idea of freedom within society is, to me, that's just an oxymoron. Um, as in not freedom within society, but like more like freedom from the point of view of society, right? Like, so, like its definition of freedom is a complete uh, joke. But yeah, and yeah, a lot of people, a lot of families, and yeah, a lot of spiritual paths and a lot of traditions. They also seem very on that on that sense of like goal cucking people. You know, like I I really enjoy learning about magic, but I don't know if that would ever be like the most important thing in life for me. Um, I don't think so. I think the most important thing for me really is these days is connecting to my child self, as weird as it sounds. Like there's a practice I've been doing, kind of. I wouldn't really call it a practice, but it's just something I've set up in my bedroom, which is that in my bedroom, which is also like where I have a desk. I actually have two desks, which is kind of weird, but yeah, I have a desk with like a computer and a desk with a computer. But in my desk, I have a photo of my child self smiling, like young child, 5 year old, 6 year old. And yeah, I think to me that's kind of the most important thing in life. Actually, it's to connect with that, the child and the innocence, and before the societal program and all the trauma, for example, essentially. Um, yeah, to me that's the most important thing. And the problem I have is that when I tend to read a lot of things related, I tend to take up the tone of the writer. Basically, I tend to take the tone of the YouTube videos I watch, and this is something I've noticed more and more as I've lived. Is that I really am bad at setting up my own tone. At reading something and not taking up the tone of the writer. And I think maybe it's kind of unavoidable for people, but like there's still a degree to which some people do it more, some people do it less. And I seem to do it quite a lot, and I really want to be aware of that. Um, and I guess you could say that is sort of like the entryway to getting goal cooked. Is that maybe you don't get uh, proper like cooked by the goal, like you just start believing you have to follow it and so on. But like you sort of like view the world through the same lens as the one you're reading, and maybe you disagree with it, but because you don't have enough like awareness of what's going on. And yeah, it's definitely something I can getting more aware of it because you know to me like laughter, for example, that's a really important part in life. And a lot of the I've not met many people who are serious about life and who are also able to laugh. Like the juxtaposition of those two is very rare. I've noticed. I guess I'm not sure. Like, is Zen Buddhism one that promotes laughter? I'm not sure. I'm not sure actually. But the thing about like the whole thing about Western and Eastern traditions is that I tend to be far more drawn to Western traditions simply because they are the symbolism I grew up with, and because they're in the language that I actually read, right, like English and French. Um, Eastern stuff has a lot of interesting things, and it's always good to like defamiliarize ourselves, right? To like sort of leave something so that we can approach it in like a more fresh light. The problem is that yeah, when you don't speak the language that this stuff was written in, there's so much filtering and Western baggage being carried, already, right? Like a lot of our understanding of Buddhism is really, from what I've heard and understood, a lot of our understanding of Buddhism is actually really like messed up because we like sort of took Buddhism out of its context. Like for instance, there are many. First of all, there are many traditions of Buddhism where like it's incredibly varied. And second of all, a lot of traditions they don't even value meditation that much. Like they mostly value like chanting uh, with other people within a community. So like Buddhism is not, those traditions are not meant to be practiced alone. They're meant to be practiced in a community. But because Buddhism has been imported to the West, it's been like as always, when you take a culture is like the word culture is incredibly well chosen. And just like a bacteria culture, it cannot just be imported because it requires other bacteria and the environment as well. From what I understand, I actually don't really know what a bacteria culture is, but taking it out of its context is basically not possible. I think that's one really good aspect of the word culture is that it grows up in a certain context and you can't just take it out of its context. It will, because it will die, because it has evolved within a certain context. And I think traditions are the same. Because I live in the West, because I speak the languages of the West, because I've grown up with the symbols of the West, I'm much more comfortable with the symbols of the Bible, for example, than I am with anything in the Eastern traditions. But that being said, there's one thing I really appreciate about. There are many things I appreciate about Eastern traditions. So the focus on the body is really important to me, which is why the chakra system, as I've said, uh, I'm pretty sure it will always be a part of my life. Not I've really seen it in myself. My these the last two, I mean, this the last period and this one, red and yellow, they've been influenced by the chakra system. Right? Red is the root, so the first one. This one is yellow, which is the third one, which is power. So I'm very much out of touch with my body, and so it's been really important for me to connect with the lower chakras, especially. So yeah, I really appreciate this aspect of Eastern traditions, like the focus on the body and really coming back to a more you know sane and basic connection with reality before trying to do anything else. And the second aspect I really appreciate about Eastern tradition is it's it can be really like unserious at times, like in a like how to say it? I'm not really sure what the word is. It's like it's like not really it's like not like childish unseriousness, but like it's more like adult type of unseriousness. Like in the way where you don't cling so fucking hard to life and you don't focus so much on the suffering aspect. Right? So I've read a piece called Charnel Grounds, and I think it describes my attitude to life really well. So the piece describes how, in the tantric Buddhist view, there is like there's like a, I'm not sure if it's a parable or if it's a way of looking at life. I'm not sure, but like uh, it was describing like charnel grounds, which were like those places. Not sure if they're imaginary or real, where bodies, dead bodies would just be piled up everywhere, like in that place. And so, you'd have those scavengers who would just go up and eat them. It would be horrible, right? It would be a horrible sight. It would be horrible for the smell, and there would be tons of like things that could kill you. It's a horrible place. But the thing is that basically what they say is that actually life is like that. Like not only is life like that, but it's eternally like that. It's always going to be like that. Everywhere you go is going to be like that, and so on. Which is horrible if you take it at face value. But then the tantric Buddhist view is that you know there's tons of suffering in that place, of course, and you could focus on the suffering part. You could focus on how horrible it is, or you could focus on cultivating, you know, beauty and joy and peace within that. That's kind of what my view is. I think of life is that yes, there are many many horrible things, and we should really talk about them because there are many things in which we can avoid the suffering in life. But I think the attempt to avoid any form of suffering whatsoever is really, really dangerous. I think that's a really dangerous path, I would say. And honestly, it's dangerous, but it's also not a very like fun path. I mean, because you're basically defining yourself on a scale of lots of suffering to less suffering. Like it doesn't seem like you can really win in that game. It just seems that you can lose less, which is not very appealing of a game. Which is why I find like the many of the Eastern traditions, maybe it's the same in the West. I don't know. They just seem a lot less like serious in about life. Like I'm not really sure what word to use, right? But like they don't seem to be so. caught up in the trap of suffering. Although in there's obviously many traditions that are also explicitly about removing suffering, right? Like, that's how some people view Buddhism, and like Buddhism is about the Buddha's code about how he's only interested in eliminating suffering. But obviously, that type of like serious clinging to life and suffering that happens everywhere, right? But I think all about these traditions that they just seem to value like laughter and love and compassion more explicitly. But I think in the West it's obviously the same, right? I mean, but it's also like really it's the same but like in a different lens, right? And I don't know. I just prefer the more simple lens of just 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 uh just loving and laughing. It's not an easy thing to do, obviously, which is probably why um in so many traditions it's so different and so complicated. But it's not easy to be a loving person, obviously, right? But I don't know. There's something I think like there's something really missing in the West, like which I've never really seen, which is like this non this ability to not be so serious. And this is really what has been bothering me about a lot of like you know because it's this really weird thing where like a lot of things in Western culture, mainstream culture, are really not serious enough. They really don't take life seriously. They really don't honor the gift of life and honor the gift of like being human with consciousness. But then the Western traditions of that try to that no they don't try, they straight up honor those things, they honor life and all that, but then they're just I don't know, they're just too serious. I don't know what to say. they, like they can't seem to like focus on the simple things in life. But maybe it's because I'm still reading on a very surface level. I do not know. But I'm very interested in symbolism for sure. I will keep doing that as long as I see value in it. But yeah, I just love learning about the tarot, for example, and that's the main focus of the book and uh, John Michael Greer's take on it. So yeah, so that's kind of been where I've been at. This has been much longer the vlog than expected. It's one of those vlogs where I just improvised with a title and a few lines. I don't really write anything, but yeah, lots of things to say about how society and collectives cuck our goals. So yeah, thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.